Thank you very much, Wissam, for this opportunity to talk to your members of the Dubai Energize Group. It's always such a pleasure to be invited to your group, and I'm very delighted to have this opportunity to explain to you today a little bit about what I do as a psychoanalyst. As you know, I studied psychoanalysis in the UK, and I work as a psychoanalyst here in Russia for almost 20 years now. I'm always interested in people, in their behavior, in their motivations, in the formation of their character and their soul. So today, my presentation will be around the topic of new personality theory. It's a theory that was born in Russia 30 years ago, and I will be explaining to you how this theory of personality can help us all to learn a little bit more about who we really are, and how, without any grandiose stripes, we are going to try and see how we can use this theory to help solve the world crisis. But first, of course, we need to understand what type of problem we are solving. And before we talk about the theory, I think most of you attending this webinar would agree with me that something is not going well in the world order. We don't understand ourselves, we don't understand each other so well, and we really don't know who we truly are inside. And we don't know more so how to collaborate with each other. You know, the multiple wars are the witness to this phenomena. You know, maybe because the problem is in the language that we use. And the language is, as we know, more tended to be in the physical sphere, in the material world. You know, we're talking about, for example, about evolution or competition, the survival of the fittest, when we're talking about cohabitation of human beings. And why is that? Well, because we think that we have the science, and that science will help us to answer the questions about ourselves, about our formation, about who we really are. But unfortunately, the science per se, the way it is defined now, is unable to answer certain questions about our human existence. Such, well, even it doesn't even know how to explain some material phenomena, such as, for example, where the black holes come from. What are we left with? We are left with the situation where we are trying to compensate the lack of knowledge of what we really need as human beings, who we really are. We overconsume. We consume so much. We tend to be buying a lot of things that we don't need, using a lot of resources. For example, I mean, when we are rich, we sometimes believe that we can be even richer. We're not satisfied with just being rich. Or when we are beautiful, we want to be even more beautiful. Basically, we created a reality where we live right now, and this reality is not really a reality that helps us to be happy. And you will agree with me that sometimes we don't know what makes us happy, and we show aggression towards other people because we don't have patience to try to understand these people. And we don't know, we don't have the tools. We don't have the tools to try to understand the other person. And when we don't understand the other person, we have aggression towards that person. And we are always scared of something that we don't know, something that we cannot explain. Psychologists, psychoanalysts, people who deal with the so-called phenomena called soul, we are responsible for answering such questions and helping people to understand a little bit more about who they are. And for this, we need to look inside the human soul. And when we look inside the human soul, we ask ourselves the question, what is this soul made of? What are the parts of that soul? In fact, what is soul? And you know, it's 200 years of Dostoevsky this year, and everybody knows Dostoevsky so well because Dostoevsky was describing, you know, the human experience in such a great way that we could relate to the characters that he was describing. He was talking about the soul of the Russian soul, you know, that famous Russian soul. But what tool do we have to try and understand what that soul is made of? Universal soul. Well, for now, until now, for 100 years, we have a tool called psychoanalysis, which claims to give us a perspective and understanding of what soul is. And as you know, psycho meaning soul, analysis meaning analysis. And without going too much into details, you know, the founder of that so-called, you know, science art is Sigmund Freud, and you know, his model of understanding the psychic apparatus. So we won't go into these details. We'll just say that thank you very much, Dr. Freud, for starting this discussion about analyzing the soul. But we need to understand, but unfortunately, it's not leading us anywhere where we want to be. We still have problems inside our head as human beings. We still have problems outside. We still have problems understanding each other, understanding mental phenomena, understanding diseases, psychological diseases, and somatic diseases. Freud gave us a lot of good things, such as unconscious and the understanding what, trying to explain what unconscious is and the drives that the unconscious mind processes. However, right now we are moving forward very fast, and we have in Russia been studying the human soul for a while, and from very different perspectives, and using different approach, using different approach. And so today we will be talking about, you know, this approach, this innovative approach in trying to understand the human soul. And as a psychoanalyst and psychotherapist, I operate in this field, in this realm of therapy, where me and my client, we meet, and what is happening is really a process of healing, where my soul is healing the soul of the patient or of the client. But how does it happen? So in this dyad, there is clear rules and guidance and understanding of how this process is happening. And without going too much into practical aspects, we can do it a little bit later. Right now, just we will talk to you about the theory. And so we need to name things appropriately in order to have an understanding of what we're talking about. And we need to use words that convey the truth and the truth of the phenomenon. So I classify myself as a Weltanschauung therapist. And this is a therapy method that is quite new. And as stated on this slide, it can be defined as being a combination of contemporary existential, to an extent a sci-fi psychoanalysis, an openly religious approach in understanding the human being and his soul. Yes, in literal translation from German, it stands for therapy of worldview, meaning a systemic solution to the problems of implementing a person's individual life project in combination with an understanding of his true purpose, his mental characteristics, the uniqueness of his fate, position in society, and his temporality, existential time of being. So, worldview, yes, that is, unfortunately, that's the closest translation that we can get to Weltanschauung. And what it really means that the person is seen as a project, not only as an entity or a person who possesses desires or has a split mind, but a person with its entirety, a holistic project. And we are dealing with this with the person as a whole. It's a very holistic approach, and it takes all these things into consideration. Just to give you a comparison with other approaches, you have other rules upon which, or dogmas upon which other approaches rest their philosophy. This is, for example, will to pleasure, Sigmund Freud. He said that everything that we do is because we want to get immediate satisfaction, be it sexual satisfaction, be it domination over something, possessing something. He always explained to us everything in terms of libido and inclination of possessing something. This, as if this is the main drive that guides all of our actions and all of our behavior. For instance, you also have Adler here, who stated that all of our existence is based on the will to power. Our approach, Weltanschauung therapy, encompasses all clear and understandable mental, meaning of the soul, all mental needs and abilities that make our human will to exist. Who are the founders of this approach? The founders of this approach are our contemporary scientists who live in Russia, and they published this book, which is called Notes of a Psychoanalyst, Homo Cynicus, Alexander Zayats. He published this book following his long-term investigations into the human psychic, and he was able to rest his theory on the findings of the following philosophers stated here: Plato, Aristotle, Hegel, Spinoza, Schopenhauer, Lotze, Schelling, Jung, Ferenczi, Brodek, Binswanger. All of these people, he studied them very carefully and analyzed their studies, and he wrote this book, 600 pages, where he's basically able to claim the new paradigm, the new understanding, a new statement in psychoanalysis, a new statement, a new theory of personality that is born out of all of his studies and all the practical revelations and practical insights that he and his partner, Dr. Kolesov, have discovered throughout their career over the last 30-odd years. And so that theory is called tendentialism. And this is the basic, the heart of this book. It's about tendentialism, and tendentialism is the basis of the Weltanschauung therapy. So tendentialism is literally an attempt to explain what the human soul is made of, and what parts, and basically we have the answer now. And the soul is made of tendencies, and really these tendencies are divine tendencies. They were mentioned by Freud himself. He was talking about göttliche Wesen, heavenly forces. And these kind of forces were also mentioned in Pythagoras and Chaldean numerology. And they referred to some kind of controlled life forces that that guide us in everything that we do. But unfortunately, and even Martin Heidegger in late 20th century, he was also able to study the ontology of the being and state some of the ways and methods of existence of human psyche. But however, it's only our Russian colleagues, Alexander Zayats and Dr. Kolesov, who came up with the classification of these tendencies. First, they were able to name them, to define them, then to classify them, and then explain how they operate inside our psyche. And which is great, and I think it's kind of explainable, because in Russia we have sometimes, you know, people like that, like Mendeleev, and people who create you know, classifications of sorts, you know. So I'm not surprised. I'm just beginning to learn this myself, and it's a pleasure to share it with my European colleagues and write articles about it and talk to you how we can use this knowledge for our work, not only in psychoanalysis but also in other areas. So this ontological tendency is a way, a method of psyche's existence inside the body. We can classify them, or we can basically classify what they're made of, which is mental phenomena, instincts, feelings, and affects. And this classification allows us to create this theory, tendentialism. And furthermore, this investigation basically leads us to a deep understanding of ourselves, our motivations, and we can it's a new way, like I would say it's a horoscope read. You're born and your psychic is formed until the age of 3/5, and then this is who you really are. These are your tendencies. These are your tendencies, and everything that you do afterwards, it's really around that that schema, around that number of tendency, around that formation. And knowing what you're made of, it's quite liberating. So we can even say that we have discovered the true meaning of color, music, sexuality, aggressiveness, and we can diagnose, we can use psychodiagnostic tool also created by the scientists, and we can really understand how certain sounds, you know, affect our soul. And this is really, you know, innovative, and it's really interesting, because so far we're not really being able to pay attention to how words and sounds and intonation affects us as human beings. But I want you to think of a moment when you are with someone in a conversation with a doctor, and you're listening to what the doctor has to say, and the doctor is just saying without really putting any soul or care into what he's saying, and you immediately you respond to this in a way that you're becoming defensive. You close yourself. You don't want to relate to this person anymore, and more so you feel scared that he will give you a diagnosis or something that will affect you for the rest of your life. And then you come to another doctor, and he knows the magic of intonations and the use of sounds in the words, and then he knows that whatever he says will be received by the other person with his heart and his soul, and it will affect the entire of his being, whatever he's going to say. And so the doctor, using a gentle voice and a nice smile, and he delivers a diagnosis which may be true, but it, in a way, it might not even affect the person who hears this diagnosis, because of the way that he was able to hide the negativity that comes with the information, with the diagnosis itself. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about deciphering the meaning of sounds and the words. We're talking about the spirit, soul, spiritual values and needs of people. In any theory of personality, it is impossible to do without such a thing as basic tendencies, basic character traits. They could be pathological, neurotic, or even ontological tendencies, just like in our case. And you would agree with me that we are not frozen metaphysical something, but we are living organisms and we are constantly changing. But having said that, something always remains true to ourselves. Something remains always the same, similar or same. So what is this sameness? Of course, the sameness is the direction and the goals of our existence. Just to give you the names of these tendencies in the jargon that we have to use, because this is something that the world is used to hear, and however, I have to say that with this new theory, the understanding of sickness and health has changed tremendously. Right now, after this theory is born, we can't really say that somebody is sick or somebody is healthy. We are now operating in the realm of tendencies, and we can just scale up and measure the level of each tendency, and we can help to stimulate the growth or reduce the tendency. And there are different ways of influencing the tendencies inside the human soul, which helps us to get away from the stereotypes, or and also get away from diagnosis, because diagnosis sometimes is very, very wrong, and people don't know the true reasons, true causes of their uneasiness, of not feeling good with oneself. So these tendencies: schizoid, paranoid, depressive, obsessive, phobic, hysterical, manic, constructive. These tendencies are dichotomous, just like the famous Greek philosophers and everybody else used to believe that the world is made of the two different things, but they're really the same. So if you want other names of these tendencies to better understand the functionality of these tendencies inside our human soul, I list them here. For example, I will give you an example. I think it's here: depressive tendency. It's responsible for harmonizing and disharmonizing. Initially, this two notions are inherent in the person, as well as this tendency, depression, tendency to be depressed. And it's basically stands for dissatisfaction and sadness from one side, and from the other side it has the sense of joy and instinct for moderation and self-control. What is the main function of this tendency, and what is its goal for existence? The name for this system of tendency is absorption, and it's meant to compare, evaluate, and the food that is being consumed by a person, also the emotional consumption, evaluation of the situation, impressions, adaptation to the environmental changes. Where is this tendency finds itself operating in the body? In the brain, hormones, mouth, taste organs, circulatory organs, heart and blood vessels. So what is this information can give us? How can it help us, this information? Well, this information can help us because we know putting psychodiagnostics on a person, and we can understand what is out of balance with that person. and we can help by using psychotherapy to balance and put the person back into the place where he feels more comfortable with himself and with the reality that he's living in. So we have 40 questions for the psychodiagnostic test, and the 40 questions, they help us to diagnose these tendencies. And now I finish my presentation, and I would like to choose one question here that I listed, and then maybe we can go into breakout rooms and we can discuss among ourselves all these interesting things, and then come back and talk to each other a bit more in details. And you can also ask me questions if anything is unclear. And you know, I think we can choose, for example, what is very interesting, it's emotional health and emotional intellect. And all of these topics are very, very relevant and often discussed in this group as well. So maybe we can choose this, and you can break out in rooms and talk about emotional health, and then we can discuss this again in public. Thank you.